what is up guys? Welcome back to Live from the Wrist. Hope you guys are doing well today. We're going to be doing another reaction video. This is going to be to 3-on-3 dress watches for under $20,000, which was a video created by Hodinkee. This was, I think it was the first 3-on-3 that they made. I could be wrong with that. You can let me know in the comments if I am. But I think this is a really awesome series that they created where they discuss a selection of watches with a specific category in mind, and it kind of gives you their thoughts on which one you should go for, what are the pros and cons of each. So that's what we're going to be doing today. I know we've been doing a couple more reaction videos, which I think I've had a lot more fun doing because it kind of gives me something to look at and for you to look at, and you can hear my opinions on what I think about what I'm watching. So let me know if there's things that you want me to react to. I can definitely see if we can put those on the calendar for us. Also, if you didn't do it already, be sure to smash that like button for us. It really does help us out. Hit the like button. It helps these videos kind of get to people who are interested in watches, like you were interested in watches. I really want to share my channel with them, so be sure to do that. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you are new here. So like I said, this came out in 2014. We might as well just jump straight into it.
Today we're going to be talking about three very special watches. This feature came from a discussion that the three of us had a few months back about if somebody wanted to buy a true watch, a real high-end watch for $20,000 at most, what would you buy? And I'm not talking about a vintage Rolex Submariner with an underline on the dial or a gilt dial, something like that. I'm talking about true in-house watchmaking. So the three watches we've chosen for you that we think represent the best value for under $20,000 are the FP Journe Chronometry Blue, the Vacheron Constantin Patrimony Traditionnel, and then the A. Lange & Söhne Saxonia. So Stephen, could you tell us about your time with the FP Journe?
So I spent a week with the FP Journe Chronometer Blue. You've got a 39mm tantalum case. It's hefty, like platinum maybe, but it's much harder and much more scratch resistant than that. The aesthetics of this watch kind of let it cross over between being a dress watch and being a casual watch. It's thin, it fits nicely under a cuff. And if you turn the watch over, you just have this really amazing modern movement looking back at you from behind the sapphire glass.
So I spent a week with Lange's entry-level watch, the Saxonia. The case is made of red gold. It houses an immaculately finished movement, the Lange caliber 941.1. It's made of German silver, and it has this beautiful creamy golden toned hue that really screams quality. The watch measures 37mm in diameter. It fits under a shirt cuff, and it's a perfect dress watch for everyday wear.
The watch that I spent some time with is Vacheron's classical dress watch. It's the Patrimony Traditionnel. It's 38mm in diameter. It houses the in-house caliber 4400. 4400 is really kind of a benchmark movement for Vacheron. It kind of brought them into the modern era in terms of in-house movements. So this is manually wound 65-hour power reserve, which is rather impressive with a single barrel. It is beautifully finished, truly traditional architecture. Geneva seal, really just an excellent, excellent movement.
All right, just 2 minutes in. I know I probably haven't spoken for a while, but I just wanted them to kind of introduce the watches so you can at least see them. So the first one was Chronomètre Bleu. That is, in my opinion, one of the best watches that you can get for the money that you're going to be spending on it. It's funny because $20,000 you probably can't find this watch for that much anymore, but like Stephen was kind of saying, it's a different type of case. The dial is absolutely beautiful with that kind of blue hue, and I think depending on where the light shines on it, it looks a little bit different. It also comes from a manufacturer that isn't as well known as Lange or Vacheron. They've become very, very popular though within, this was 2014, so they're fairly well known now. They're a really beautiful watch. The Lange Saxonia, it's a perfect example of German engineering. I have been outspoken about my love for Lange and love for German manufacturers. Actually, if you look at the movement, it has a very typical 3/4 plate, which is something that Lange is very, very well known for. It's a beautiful watch. German engineering, it's essentially perfect. And then the last one was the one that we're talking about right now, or Ben is talking about right now, is the Vacheron Constantin Patrimony Traditionnel. This was actually one of the first Vacheron Constantins that I fell in love with. I loved how simple it was. I loved how it was a time-only watch. Beautiful movement that's kind of, he's going to go into it, but really brought them into the world of high-end manual wine movements, or at least within the modern era. They've always been considered great, but this was a real benchmark for them. all these watches fit really, really nicely on the wrist. I think that's something that's really common with them. But I'll let them continue.
The FP Journe costs $19,890. The Vacheron costs $19,900, and the Lange is $18,600. Paul, why is this watch the least expensive Lange?
One of the main reasons is the movement used. It's really derived from their very first caliber. It's a little bit small for the case. The Saxonia was transformed pretty much in 2007 from its original design in 1994 when it included a large date function. So it just displays the time now. And so with that, the movement's a lot less expensive to make.
Here we have something that's very modern. You have a double barrel system, gives you 56 hours of power reserve. Then it looks like you have the balance over on the right all by itself. But actually what Journe has done here is you have one wheel between the two barrels, and the rest of the going train has been hidden between the main plate and the dial. So you get this kind of illusion that the free sprung balance is sitting off on its own.
Because essentially the whole train system is hidden between the base plate and the dial, I mean, that could offer potentially some issues with servicing down the road. Would it be something that your average watchmaker would even want to tackle?
For servicing, I think you're going to have to go through FP Journe. The FP Journe caseback actually uses special screws that only FP Journe watchmakers are really able to get off.
All right, just 316 really quick. I wanted just to talk about that comment. So going back to the Saxonia, they said it's an older movement that had a date function that's a little bit smaller for this case. They've modified it obviously to remove the date and then have it fit within this within the case of the Saxonia. I don't think there's really anything wrong with that. It's well executed, so really nothing too important there. As far as the FP Journe goes, it's actually a really beautiful movement, and I think modern is a great way of describing it. Having two barrels on one side and the balance wheel on the other. They were talking about how the going train, which is essentially how the power gets to from those barrels to the regulator, which is the hairspring. To get the power they're essentially saying the going train was between the dial and the base plate of the movement. So it's actually on the, if you want to call it the top side of the movement. And they're saying that this could have potential servicing problem. You probably don't want to take it to FP Journe to have it serviced. I don't really know where else you would really want to take an FP Journe, especially one like this. If you had to have service needs for this, I think taking it to the manufacturer is the only thing that you should be doing, especially with this type of watch, because these are not watches that a lot of people have seen or a lot of watchmakers have worked on. So interesting comment, but definitely take it to FP Journe if you have problems with it. But I think modern is the perfect way of describing it. It really is a beautiful movement. Let's keep going.
When this movement first came out, I read a review of it by Kari Gultilainen. And Kari, as many of you know, is one of the modern legends of traditional watchmaking. And he took a look at this movement and said, this is just a supremely well-decorated, incredibly serviceable, long-lasting movement. It really is just beautiful to look at. Could be operated on by somebody well-trained in watchmaking. It doesn't necessarily have to go back to Vacheron. I actually think this is one of the best movements and best watches that Vacheron makes, period, at any price point. The Journe, it's really much more casual.
I personally don't put on a suit and tie every day. For somebody with my sort of lifestyle where I do need to have the flexibility, if I was going to invest the $20,000, I like the Journe just because it's a watch I can wear pretty much anywhere. I like the density and the heft of something like a platinum watch or a white gold watch. But the nice thing about the tantalum is wearing it on the subway to work. I don't have to worry if I nick it on a pole that I'm going to put a huge dent or a huge scratch in the case that can't be fixed.
All right, 4:15. So just going back to the Vacheron movement, Ben's comments about this being, obviously it was Kari Voutilainen's comments, but him kind of bringing to light the fact that this is just a really well-made movement and it can be serviced by anyone. That is, I think, the difference between, and I'm not saying it's different from Lange or FP Journe, but I think that's the difference between, that's what you get when you end up spending a little bit more money and buying a watch that just is from a manufacturer that focuses on that. I think they probably were thinking about just trying to get their own watchmakers to have an easy time with these movements. But I think that's a perfect watch, especially if you're kind of entering into these higher end pieces. You can find something that's very, very simple in its design. But at the same time, if there is servicing needed, which you shouldn't really need for a very long time with this watch, but very long, that's maybe a little bit too lenient. But having a movement that's easy to be used and worked on, I think that's a perfect way of entering into this hobby. Because I think sometimes when you get into some very, very expensive pieces, you can end up buying things that are very, very difficult to service, and then that gets very, very expensive for you. So this, I think, is a really nice sweet spot.
Bjorn makes 900 watches per year, or thereabouts. Longuet makes around, say, between 5 and 10,000, and Vacheron makes around, say, 15 to 20,000, roughly. So you're getting something that is far more rare and potentially even more interesting with the FP Journe. I mean, so say if they make 900 watches per year, and this is just one of, say, 6 or 7 or 8, 9 models that Journe makes, you're not going to see too many of these out there. That's compelling.
This is designed from the ground up, like all of Journe's watches, in-house, with a focus on chronometry and accuracy. And for an engineer like me, it's something that appeals to me. Pure focus on timekeeping accuracy.
We talked about servicing of the Vacheron in the way that it would be relatively easy. And with the Journe, it would be potentially more difficult because of the architecture and because of the screw heads and the case back, etc. Where does the Lange fall?
The movement's really robust. However, to assemble it is a challenge because you have to align every gear and pivot in the going train to fit within the jewels on the bridge. It could take hours if you don't have the right tool. So if you go to a watchmaker outside of Lange, I think the service cost might be high.
All right, 5:26, and then we'll watch the end because there's only about a minute left. But just when it comes to servicing any of these watches, you should be taking these straight to the manufacturer in order to have that done. There's no doubt in my mind that that's how you should be doing it. It is a good comment from them to kind of talk about servicing, but always take these you should always take these watches especially to the manufacturer to have them serviced. I probably will get some comments saying that you can find watchmakers that will do it for a lot less. If this is your first really, really, really nice watch, you have to trust your watchmaker a lot in order to allow them to work on these. That's just my opinion. Some people may have differing opinions, but if you want it done correctly, you should take them to the manufacturer. I think of servicing as kind of when you buy a car, you really shouldn't buy a car if you can't afford the servicing of that vehicle. I think the same thing can be applied to watches. You shouldn't buy a watch if you cannot afford the upkeep of that specific watch. Same with if you're purchasing a house, you have to be able to afford the upkeep of it. A watch is exactly the same. They're expensive pieces, servicing them are expensive. If you buy a quality piece, you shouldn't have to service it very, very often, but you want to make sure it's done properly, and the manufacturer will make sure that happens. They spoke a little bit about how the FP Journe is a little bit more unique, being that it's produced in fewer quantities than Lange and Vacheron watches are produced in. This was done in 2014. Now I think FP Journe has really taken the watchmaking industry by storm, and a lot more people have Journes because of that factor. Like I said, chronomètre bleu you can hardly get for under $20,000 anymore. So. Difficult to get, but I think it's definitely become very, very mainstream. We'll continue straight to the end.
They're all within 2 millimeters of each other. We've got the Lange at 37, the Vacheron at 38, and the Journe at 39. What's funny is the Journe wears much larger than the Lange, even though they're only 2 millimeters apart.
Honestly, I think 37 millimeters is an absolutely great size for a dress watch. And the fact that Lange designed it in this manner with a thin bezel, it makes it wear larger than 37 millimeters.
For a dress watch, I would agree with Paul. I mean, I think 37 is a pretty perfect size. That said, I didn't find this 39 millimeter case to be too big. The case is really slim, the lugs kind of hug the wrist nicely.
I think 38 millimeters is a great happy medium for a real dress watch. That said, I think the Journe sits better on the wrist than the Vacheron. Just in terms of wearability, this watch is really superb. I think the Lange is great as well. It really hugs a little bit better than I thought it would, and it doesn't look small on my wrist. And 37 for a modern watch sounds small. But overall, I think all three of these watches are deserving of certainly your attention and potentially your money down the road if this is kind of something that you'd be looking for.
Yeah, three great watches in 2014 and still today are three great watches. I think the biggest question really is which watch would I go for out of these three? And I think it's a tough choice. I think I would probably not go for the Lange. I think I prefer the stylistic elements of the Lange 1 a little bit more than the Saxonia. Saxonia is a little bit simpler. I do like the date function, and also the fact that, you know, the date function was actually from it took its inspiration from a clock in an opera house. I kind of like that story, so I probably wouldn't go for the Saxonia. It would be between the Vacheron and the FP Journe. And I think it really comes down to like what mood am I in. The FP Journe I would go for if I was wanting something a little bit different, a little bit more unique. The Vacheron obviously is a beautiful watch, but there are a lot of watches that look very, very similar to it. But we are going to be releasing a video about this, but I'm going to talk about some of the watches that kind of caught my eye recently, and I have kind of shifted my taste a little bit to more dressier watches, a little bit simpler watches, and for some reason the Vacheron really is speaking to me now. So it'd be between those, but right now, in this moment right now, I'd definitely go for the Patrimoine Traditional from Vacheron. It's so simple. I like looking at that movement because I think it's really, really beautiful. Yeah, it's just, I'm feeling a little bit more in a traditional classy mood. Not saying the FP Journe is not, but I think it kind of pulls on different strings in my mind. And I bet you tomorrow I'd go for the FP Journe. Let me know in the comments which one you would go for. It'd be interesting to see how many would go for each of these watches. I hope you guys enjoyed this reaction video. This was kind of fun for me to do, especially because these are really the videos that made Hodinkee who they are today. And I think it's a good thing to kind of give you my thoughts on it, and also resurrect some of these absolutely beautiful videos that they created. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you didn't do it already. Also, don't forget to smash that like button for us. Really does help us out. Comment below what you think about this video, as well as which watch you would choose out of these three dress watches for under $20,000 US. And with that said, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time.